Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I'm here today with Kerrie Lee Brown. Kerrie Lee Brown, global journalist, motivational speaker, corporate wellness, and heart health advocate. After a successful career as the editor-in-chief of various health and wellness magazines, such as Oxygen, Women's Fitness, and American Health and Fitness, and more recently, Denver Life Magazine and Colorado Home and Garden, Kerrie Lee Brown has become an expert in the areas of print journalism, media, and publishing. Throughout her career, she has also written for more than 150 magazines worldwide and built a marketing and communications division from the ground up for an international mind-body wellness educator. Today, she is an avid speaker, writer, and editor for numerous media outlets across the country and works with entrepreneurs, businesses, and brands to enhance their message through heartfelt storytelling. As a busy journalist and mom of two, Kerrie knows what it's like to deal with the pressures of balancing a demanding career and raising a family. After ignoring the warning signs at 39, she had an unexpected health scare that led her to the realization that stress can impact your life no matter what your age or life stage. After her wake-up call, Kerrie Lee Brown wrote and self-published the book, My Heart, Myself, a heartfelt guide for women who do too much. This is on Amazon, and it has become a mental health, corporate wellness, and heart health advocate. In 2019, she launched Red Lily Lifestyle Brand, a unique storytelling platform that provides a safe place for writers, non-writers, and new authors to share their stories of struggle to strength. I love that. With over 150 contributors worldwide and growing, Kerrie Lee Brown continues to push the envelope in the digital storytelling space so contributors can feel comfortable sharing the real life experiences in order to turn their pain into purpose. Wow, it was so good today. Today we talked about Kerrie Lee's story, her wake-up call, how to de-stress your life, how to recognize when you are people pleasing, how to say no and say yes to yourself, looking at the reasons why we're doing something and how we want to feel being one of the most important things we can do on our journey. It helps us choose for our lives better. And again, the theme of choosing yourself, of looking at your life as a whole picture and putting breaks in, self-care, and what that truly is, not just having a massage or a bubble bath. It was just so good today. This is right up the Sisterhood of Sweat listeners' alley. I think you're going to love this one. So get your coffee, your tea, or whatever, and cuddle up on the couch and tune into this awesome episode. Love you guys. Without further ado, we are with the one, the only, Kerrie Lee Brown. I am so excited to have Kerrie Lee Brown on the Sisterhood of Sweat today.
Hi, how are you?
Doing amazing. I've, read your magazine that you were the editor, Oxygen. It used to be one of my favorite things. I would get an Oxygen magazine, and I know you've had a little bit to do with some other ones like Fitness RX and other health. And I always would get, because I have been a fitness geek into fitness since I was 21. And I would just get it. And it was when I was kind of new in the industry, and I would put it up on whatever, like stepper, treadmill, whatever I was doing. And I would find out all the new workouts, the new tips. all of the things. Tell everybody a little bit about your experience
Yeah.
as the editor of these amazing magazines.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on the show for one. I always love talking about where my journalism career started because it means so much to me, but also it's kind of where I've evolved from. And I always end up coming back to the health and wellness aspect, personally and professionally. So when I graduated from journalism school, gosh, that's dating me now, right? 25 years ago. Originally, ironically, I did study magazine journalism and I wanted to go into fashion journalism, ironically. But there was a job opening for an editorial assistant in fitness at, funny enough, a bodybuilding magazine, Muscle Mag. So I didn't know anything about bodybuilding, certainly didn't know anything about the space or really fitness for that matter, but I jumped on board just because I wanted to start in the magazine world. And that's kind of where they gave me my biggest start. And within that publishing house, Robert Kennedy Publishing, I was the assistant editor of Muscle Mag. I then moved on to found and to be the editor of American Health and Fitness, which was a men's title, and men's fitness and celebrity fitness. And we did a lot of sports conditioning and talked to a lot of elite athletes and professionals. And then I got the opportunity again to go on, but this time in the female space, and that was the editor-in-chief of Oxygen. So my last part of my tenure over there at Robert Kennedy Publishing was with Oxygen, and I helped shape the brand from the beginning. I obviously wrote a lot of the cover stories, went to all the photo shoots in LA and Miami and all these great places, and where they did the training and covered all the big events and big shows. So I really got my foot in the door in the fitness world then from behind the scenes at Oxygen for sure, especially with the women's.
So you wrote for Oxygen
Yeah,
and now you're writing for Bodyscape.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
had the pleasure of being interviewed by you.
yeah.
Uh, and I got to see how your writing just makes you feel like you have wings and you're floating on air. Like you just
That was sweet.
write the best. I don't know, you just know how to bring out the story about somebody. I loved, and I think that's a gift, but you've probably had to work on your gift to hone all those skills in, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes from experience. Obviously, I've been a journalist and a writer and editor for almost 25 years. I've also, in between my time at Oxygen and now being with Bodyscape and Epic Fit, I've written for over 150 different publications worldwide as a freelancer. Pitched and published articles in Fitness RX and all these different health and wellness women's running publications, but also other publications as well in the marketing and in the business realm and parenting, in luxury and real estate. And I think over time, after interviewing so many different people from all spectrums of life, really, and lifestyle, I've just really gravitated towards the storytelling side of my kind of business and what I love to do, and that is getting someone's story out of them, no matter who they are. I mean, they could be a fitness celebrity or someone else, an actor, or they could be someone like a mom, a stay-at-home mom that has an amazing story of raising 5 kids. And I think it just resonates with me. I think one of my biggest missions and what I love mostly about being a journalist in my nowadays is that I can give a voice to the voiceless,
Oh,
and
I
I
love
help
that.
someone tell their story, because everyone has one, as we know, but not everyone knows that their story will actually impact or inspire someone else to be able to maybe tell their story, or just basically to give them some advice on what they're going through. And I just think as a catalyst to be able to bring out those stories and those words in any publication I write for, it just makes me feel really good that I can do that. And I guess another part of my writing is how I'm a very conversational writer, as they call it. So I'm not like hardcore news. It's all about getting that story across, or that message, whether it be for a business, a brand, or an individual. And I just love doing it. So, I mean, I guess it comes down to when you love what you do, right? It doesn't feel like a job and you just help people. So,
So true. And I loved reading your book today.
yeah,
It was conversational. And when it really drew me in was when you started telling your story.
yeah,
And I love that because that's pretty much the way that I do everything. When I just have to tell a little bit of a story about something and then I have a message. So
yes,
um, that to me is why I remember something, is usually I remember it because of the story that
Yeah,
went with it. So I love your style. And
good.
today I'm gonna say one thing that really stood out to me in your book is when you said in every Wonder Woman, because you kind of sound like Wonder Woman to all of us today when you're
Yeah.
telling about writing for 150 magazine publications, and not to mention you have two boys and you're
Yeah.
married, and stay fit. Um, so you said in every Wonder Woman, there is lurking a ticking time bomb.
Yeah.
And I want you to kind of go into detail about that and how that played out in your life.
Yeah, well, it's ironic because I didn't really realize how much the daily pressures I was putting on myself to do it all throughout my career, in my personal life, just as a independent woman in general, like growing up, wanting to run magazines, wanting to eventually write a book, just different things, have a family. And I never realized that I was actually doing all of those things, being a superwoman or a Wonder Woman, as they say. But at the same time, I didn't realize how much some of these stresses were actually putting on my physical body. And, I think that's where I say when, we're all a ticking time bomb ready to go off, we don't know how emotional and how all of these kind of pressures are going to impact our physical lives. And that's why, because that happened to me with my heart issues. And when I wrote the book, which was a year and a half after I had my heart surgery at age 39, and, I had a lot of time to reflect on what was going on in my life. And, from a work perspective, from personal, to even just really
Right.
where I wanted to go with things,
Mhm.
on both those levels, and as a mom too. So I think being, a ticking time bomb is really, that's a harsh kind of way of putting it, but it was my wake up call to really reflect and to reevaluate where I was. And I think writing the book really was very therapeutic for me, as it is for anyone who writes a book or writes even in a journal, can be very therapeutic.
Right.
It really brings out your thoughts and feelings and ideas about what you're going through, and you try to kind of work through them. So my book, which is a guidebook for women, it really is an easy read and a quick read, but it's also because it's very reflective of what I went through. So I really hope that kind of resonates when people read it, because they can look at their own lives. And I think that was the whole point of me doing it, really. But yeah, that's kind of how I felt when I was writing it. I'm just very authentic, and I really wanted to get that message across.
I want to back up to what you said because you kind of glossed over it, and I really want the audience to get this.
Yeah.
You had heart surgery at 39.
Yes.
And can you just kind of, because I felt like reading your story was like reading mine, but mine was my hamstring ripping out of my pelvis, my
Right.
groin ripping out of my pelvis, my other hamstring. Like I ignored all of the signs and just
Yeah.
kept going in denial. I want you to kind of go through the scenario of where you were at and how you had a heart attack.
Yeah, so I was the executive editor of a national parenting magazine at the time, and kind of on the top of my media game, if you will. I'm actually from Canada, so this was in Toronto. We now live in Denver, Colorado. But back in Toronto, and I was doing a lot of media, I was in the public eye, I was doing a lot of interviewing of a lot of moms and a lot of parents, obviously, but I wasn't really looking at my own health and wellness as much as I should have been. So I was ignoring the signs. So over the course of 6 to 8 months, maybe prior to this happening, um, I was experiencing some physical things that I was noticing. I had a long commute to work, and I was getting tired and out of breath, walking up and down stairs at the train station. Even going up and down the stairs in my own house. I
Yeah.
was having more and more migraines. I was feeling really achy and painy, and a little like more than usual. But then at the same time, being a woman or a mom, I was like, you know what, it's just stress, or maybe it's that time of the month. I was really just glossing over all these different things that when I look back now, I really realize were all symptoms leading up to what happened. And so over those months, they kind of became um, a lot more severe. And then I went away on a business trip actually for the magazine, and it was to Florida, and we did a whirlwind trip. My family and I was writing a big article about, you know, all that, like from Disney and Orlando and, you know, everywhere, Universal and all these within a week period. And I came back and I was so exhausted and stressed, and I was on deadline, and I knew something was going on with my body. I think I just kind of, it just clicked. And so one evening, and this is what I talk about, but I was putting the kids to bed, and they were younger at the time. I mean, this is almost, 10 years, almost 10 years ago now, but I was putting the kids to bed, and all of a sudden I felt a really sharp pain in my arm, but it was, or like in my shoulder, but it was actually my right arm. And I think that's what caught me off guard, because I thought, well, that's strange and it hurts, but it could never be a heart issue, because usually you hear of those issues in your left side. And it was just something I wasn't knowledgeable about, because I didn't really ever think that something like that would happen to me. I had no idea I had a heart issue. So anyway, I had a heart attack. So what happened was I lost breath, I lost a little bit of consciousness, and I went downstairs. I kind of gathered myself up, went down to my kitchen, and my husband said, "Do you want it? I'm going to call the ambulance." And a big thing was, again, I was still in denial that all these things were real, like, this was really real. And I just thought, no, I'm just tired. I can get through this. I don't know what it is, but something just hit me in my arm, and it hurts and it's tingly, but it cannot be a heart issue. So we didn't. And I went to bed, and I tossed and turned. I did not sleep. And there was a lot of, a lot of pain there. And then it wasn't literally until the next few days where I went to my doctor, and that's what she confirmed. So I went for more tests as to why, just to find out what really happened. And my cardiologist at the time confirmed that I had a heart issue, a heart defect from birth. And that was something I didn't know. And it was all that stress and pressure I was putting on myself, emotionally and mentally, on top of this physical kind of issue I had for years, that really made it severe. And that's what caught up with me that time. And I had a heart attack and ended up having cardiac ablation surgery to rectify. It was an electrical issue that I ended up having. So it all kind of came at once. And that's why in the book I call it my wake up call,
Yeah.
because it was, an emotional thing, it was mental. And then of course it was the physical side of it that it came out in. And I was
Yeah.
lucky enough to be healthy enough otherwise to be able to get through it. So that's kind of how it all came together. And after that, it really changed my life, not only from a lifestyle perspective and taking time for me and learning more and more about how I can make myself a priority, but also I started to talk to other women. And I think that's the biggest part of, and just like you do in your channels too, but when you can talk about your own story and it resonates with people, and whether, people don't have to have heart issues or be worried about, losing breath walking up and down the stairs, but they might be dealing with something else that they're going through mentally, emotionally, psychologically, pressures from work, whatever it is, and in marriage. And then they will realize that, wow, if I don't take care of myself and give myself that self-care you need, then something physical or really detrimental could happen to me too. And I think that's where my life started to change. So not only me personally, but that's where my mission started to change, to start helping other women and for them to share their story.
And unfortunately, it's the time you couldn't ignore it later. Like it's like I couldn't ignore it. Like I had to be flat on my back and not run a million different directions at 5 times at once. And you had to pay attention.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And you have to listen to your body. That's the big thing. Like when I say body, at that point, I also mean listen to my intuition, listen to my gut, listen to my physical ailments, and really take note of them and do something about them. And I saw a naturopath, I saw a cardiologist, I started changing my eating habits, I changed roles. We moved to the US. I thought it would be a great way for me to get away from the hustle and bustle of the Toronto city commuting lifestyle. We moved to Denver, and there was just some big changes that I needed to make in order for me to be able to deal with it. And then that's also what I try to teach women now, is that, sometimes you have to listen to your internal intuition in order to really make a difference in your life. And I think that you have to, you have to trust yourself. And if you see something happening physically, it's a sure sign that you have to learn how to slow down a bit and make yourself a priority. And that's exactly what I talk about in my book, is that you have to learn to make yourself a priority. And whether that means personally or a change of jobs professionally. And I've gone through it too. I've gone through the ups and downs of making these decisions, or maybe it's even saying no to someone. And that's what I talk about in the book, about learning to say no. It's hard. It's really, really hard as a woman, as a mom, as a colleague, to learn to say no to different things, but it really helps in the long term. And I mean, these are just things that I really have only, really not necessarily studied like from an education perspective, but I've really experienced them. And I think that, talking more and more like you do, and all that, is just helps people. It's just the best thing we can do.
Oh my gosh, it's so therapeutic. The podcast is very therapeutic.
Yeah.
And when you saying no,
Yeah.
I know this is speaking to the listeners out there. We were brought up, a lot of us, because I know my demographic, in the arena and the era of people pleasing
Yes.
and nurturing, and woman being Wonder Woman and
Yeah.
Superwoman. So I love in the book where you say, remember why you're saying no in the first place.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
write
And
it down, right?
yeah. And, I do have a lot of inspirational stuff in there, and I did that on purpose. So women would, go back to them and read them again. And I have to read my book often too, and go back to some of these things, because they're good reminders about how we have to be very caring for ourselves. Because if we don't say no when we need to, it could be more detrimental longer term. And what I mean by that is that if you push yourself too far, or you have too many obligations in a day, and then all of a sudden somebody's saying, yeah, but I really need you to come over and help me move a couch, I don't know, something. But you really can't do it. You just cannot fit it in. But normally you would just drop everything and go for your friend. But really, at the end of the day, you're gonna, one, you might end up resenting them. Two, you could maybe be, putting time into something that's not as important as you focusing on something else. Maybe it was a work thing or a family thing. And then you're not listening to your inner intuition. And I think that's a big part, because whether you regret doing those additional chores, or whether it just hinders you in some way, you're not being as productive as you could be, and you're not giving your all. So when you spread yourself too thin, doing all these different things and being a people pleaser, it can just be, I really feel it can be just more detrimental overall. And you want to be as healthy as you can, right? Mentally, physically, for your family, for your children, for your colleagues, for your friends. So you want to be there for them, right? And that's what I meant by that, where you don't want to do too many things if it doesn't feel right, because I just feel like it doesn't sit right with you. And at the end of the day, the only one you have to answer to is yourself. When it comes to these things, like, you're the one who's going to feel it. You might feel really good that you took the time to go help your friend move that couch, but then in the meantime, now you're behind on different things, or you couldn't take little Johnny to hockey practice or whatever because you did this. You just have to really look at your priorities and reevaluate them. So saying no is not a bad thing. I think it's a good thing when it comes to your own health. And I think that's what I'm trying to reiterate in the book as well.
And I love that you said that. And in the book, you said, say no, remember your why, write it down,
Yeah.
and let the guilt flow off of you. I love those. I love that. Let the guilt flow off of you.
Yeah.
Because what I've found, because I'm a recovering people pleaser and have learned to set some boundaries, is it might feel hard at first because you just want to please everyone.
Yes.
But then in the long term, you see why the no was a yes to yourself, and why it was the right thing to be putting some no's in place, some boundaries in place.
Yes.
So people know the limit, and you're protecting your energy. Yes. And you need your energy to be able to be there for your kids, your family, your friends.
Exactly. And when you summed it up, because I think energy is the best way to describe it. Because again, you could end up resenting that friend, or what if you hurt yourself at doing that and you shouldn't have been there to begin with? And then what? Like, it's just like you have to give yourself some care. And I think that's what women in general, whether you're a mom or not, it doesn't matter. Women in general, we try to do too much. And I think there's this always being, maybe at least in my era, there's always been this pressure so that women can do it all. Well, we can do it all, but you have to be mindful of whether you need to or want to do it all. Like, just because we can, do we need to do it all at once? I mean, I think we have the prerogative, it's our own prerogative to care for ourselves. And I think at the end of the day, no one else is going to care for us better than ourselves. And if that means taking some time to say no to something or to not be as much of a people pleaser, I think at the end of the day, you're really answering to yourself and what you can do. So yeah, I agree. It's the energy, what you give off is what's going to come back to you as well. And I think, your friends and family and colleagues will understand that. Maybe not right at first, but in the long term, if you're healthy to continue the relationship and to help them down the road, they'll know why you said no to begin with, like a few weeks ago. So
And I did find myself screenshotting things in the book that I liked, like quotes. And I love that you say, love what you do, but love yourself more, because you're doing a job you love. I'm
yes,
doing a job I love.
yeah.
But then there has to be that place for you where you aren't overextending yourself because of your passion, right?
Right, absolutely. And that's the thing too. Sometimes we can give ourselves too much to something we love too much. And I think again, it's all about balance. And again, that's what my book is really about. It's me searching and going through different ways to find balance in my own life. And I actually do a lot of speaking now on this too. I have a few events coming up where I'm speaking at a couple of colleges and conferences on how to find that work life, internal balance where we can be the happiest we or the healthiest we can be, which will equate to being happy. And I think at the end of the day, even if you love doing something, like I am a self-proclaimed workaholic, I'm sure you are too, because we love what we do, but you do have to close the computer sometimes, turn it off, just watch something silly on TV, just to kind of like break away, because otherwise you're going to be too in tune with what you're doing, and you don't want to turn that passion into something you don't like. And I think that's really important. So that's what I meant by that quote. I think it's really important to just everything in balance as much as we can anyway, right? So
So, what are 5 ways for people out there to know or recognize that they are people pleasing?
yeah, oh goodness. Ha. Well, I think of people, and I am a people pleaser. I always have been. I really have tried over the years, especially since my heart attack, to be able to recognize when I'm doing it too much. But some signs of that, oh my goodness, it's when you run down because you're always trying to appease others. I think that's the biggest one, because you're not, again, looking at your own health and your own overall wellness. That would be one. When you're not setting boundaries, when you're not able to say no, and set healthy boundaries, right? To be able to say, I'm going to turn off the computer because I'm not going to answer that email to a colleague. Or some people I know now put on like an auto response saying, these are my office hours, even if they are working from home. And, with technology, we're always on our phone. But not, if you're not setting your own boundaries, if you're not taking the time for yourself, and if you're also not learning, like saying no to things that you really could say no to because you feel obligated, I think those are 3 of the biggest ones. And I think too, if you're a people pleaser, you kind of get this sense of, if you don't do it, you might be a failure, or you
Oh,
might,
letting someone down.
or letting someone down. Exactly. And so I think we have to get over that feeling. So if you feel that you can't say no, or because you'll let someone down, think about yourself for a moment. You might be appeasing them and getting them to get through what they need you for, or help them, which is wonderful. But then who are you really letting down if you've maybe given up like sleep for that, or missed a family time or time with your child because of that obligation? I mean, who are you really letting down, right? So So that's another sign. If you really feel like you'd be letting down someone, I think that's an issue. And then another one too is like, if you can't, talk openly with that person, if they're wanting something from you, and talk openly and saying like, it's just not the right time for me, or it's not going to work in my schedule this week, or whatever it is. I think there's an issue there as well. If you can't speak openly and talk to someone about it, that's something else. That, like, if you're trying to hide why you can't say no, I think that's also a sign.
But we
So
don't always have to explain, right? When we say
no,
no, we
you
don't
don't.
always have to give a reason when we say no.
No, I mean, that's the thing. When I say talk to someone, I don't mean explain it. You're right. We don't have to explain ourselves. I think we just
Yeah.
have to tell someone that, you know what, I'm not going to do this right now. And that's my prerogative. Now, it does get tricky though, right? Because
Yeah,
people
it can
say,
be.
well, what about at work? I mean, how can you, I don't want to lose my job if I say no to my job. You know, there can be tricky times where you're like, well, I kind of have to be a people pleaser because he pays me, right? But case in point, I've left jobs and roles because I've gotten to a point where I just didn't feel like they were serving me. They weren't serving my health, my sanity, maybe my mental
Oh, right,
health.
100%.
Yeah, and I think it's just, maybe it's my age, but I just feel like it's our prerogative to
It's
do what,
not worth it.
not worth it. And I do remember when I actually reflect a bit on my 20s and that in this book too, and look back on before I started my career, when I was just starting in the magazine world. And, you always try to appease, like, oh, I have to go for this next promotion or this, and, work your way up the ladder, or work for this magazine and get up my name up there. And, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think now that I look back and I'm at this age, I'm almost 50 now, I'm 49, and I know what I want for the future, and I don't want to be unhealthy when I go to do that. So I now have become a lot better at saying no, setting boundaries, and being able to, inspire other women to do that as well in their own lives, even though all of our lives are different, obviously. But I think there's always an element in anybody's life that we can add that to it. And I think that'll, in the long run, help in some way. So
And I love how you said that, and you went into the book, and this as a lesson I learned
yeah,
probably I think around 55-ish, but you start realizing all these, like, I'm an achievement girl. In
yeah,
the Strength Finder, it's like high on my personality list.
right, right.
And so you start realizing achieve, run from the next achievement to an accolade and accolade,
Yeah,
and you achieve. Okay. And then you're like, some of these things feel empty,
yeah,
and you get there and you've really, I mean, been on this hamster, just running to the next thing. And you realize at some point, then when I was flat on my back, it was more like, um I'm seeking external validation in some way.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
what do I have to prove to somebody? And or am I proving it to myself? You have all these questions that start pouring in, and kind of my internal work was more um, trying to get validation or approval
Yeah,
or all of these things. And you could be trying to get it from someone that's never going to give it to you, and that you, or a thing that's it's never going to be enough. Um, and so then you realize, I need to give these things to myself that
yes.
I've been looking for out there. It's an inward process.
Absolutely. And that's the basis of self-care, because with self-care, you can't expect, like, it's only about you and what you do for yourself and how you feel about it afterwards. It's not about validation from other people. That's why I try to say, like, self-care is so important for women, but all people, to be able to, implement into their lives. Because I'm a self-proclaimed, like I said, a workaholic still, and I still, sometimes seek validation from my friends or family or husband on certain projects or certain things. But you're right, not everyone's going to give it to you, and they will never give it really in the way you would want it or expect it, because you know what you want, but they don't necessarily know. So I think there's an element of that, and the pressure I used to put on myself, I still do, that led to all of my health issues, because it was, again, that stress, the stress of it all, right? Like if I'm seeking validation because I've reached a certain point in my journalism career, or worked at a certain magazine, or worked with a certain publisher or celebrity, and then all of a sudden I don't get what I thought it would be, then it's very disappointing. And so I think for me, I've learned that, sometimes, and I know it's very cliche, but it's not the destination, it's the journey, that whole
Yeah.
thing. It kind of is true. It's not necessarily where you end up, because there's always going to be somewhere else you can go. So really you have to find satisfaction in that journey, whether it be, again, personally or professionally or anything, or even spiritually. And you have to do that inner work, because at the end of the day, you only have to answer to yourself, and it's how you feel. And I'm just like you. I'm a go-getter, but I'm also kind of never satisfied. Like, I'm always doing the next project. Right now I'm working with 6 or 7 clients of writing and editing and all these different things that, it's juggling, and it's trying to balance it all. But that's just the way I'm wired. Not everyone's like that. But then it's those of us who really have to take that, look in the mirror and say, what would really make us satisfied anyway? And I'm not even sure if I could answer that, because I always keep pushing. But then I have to look back and say, okay, if I'm like this, then how can I take steps along the way to be able to kind of, be healthy, be resourceful, but also like have that inner kind of work along the way, so I am satisfied with each, milestone, because I've gone through that too. It's
Yeah.
and I feel like I felt like I'm not enough in many, many ways.
Oh my gosh. I think too that not enoughness, like, lately I have a little black dress challenge just to get everybody kind
Yeah.
of some momentum and get them
Uh-huh.
going. And I like to do it so everybody does it on a point system, and then the people with the top points I'll just throw in a drawing. And so somebody said to me, well, I'm not going to win, why should I enter?
Mhm.
I was like, but let me just go a step further than that. I'm 60, I'm coming back, I'm getting back up, it's my comeback story. Did the magazine, and now I'm
Yeah.
gonna do, Fitness America here in 3 weeks.
Amazing. Amazing.
And I didn't decide for sure that I was going until, like, 5 weeks out or something like that. Maybe it was 4, but and it was just funny because you see these pictures of these people,
Yeah.
you're like, so and so from such and such a place is 5'5", 118, and you look at her and you're like, oh, you know, wow,
Yeah.
and she's 49, or however old, and you're like, and you could be looking at that, comparing yourself
Yeah.
and feeling not enough and feeling intimidated. You're like, oh, I could have competed with you when I was 6 years ago before I
Yeah.
broke everything, and you look at that and you see someone else and you could completely talk yourself out of it, because
Yeah.
that feeling of not enough, or I'm not going to win, right? You could
Right.
have that whole feeling, like this gal in my studio was feeling like, why should I enter? I'm not going to win. But you know what? I want to flip that on ahead for a second.
Yeah.
You are winning. You are winning every time you are bettering yourself and feeling good in your skin and doing it for the right reasons.
Yes.
It isn't all about winning. Like these people in the challenge, when they learning good habits to eat better, to exercise, connect with girls in the challenge. When I go, I'm going out of my comfort zone at 60. I'm saying, hey, I'm 60. I'm doing this. And I'm seeing other girls and friends and people that are like-minded. And I'm eating very healthy and clean and drinking my water. I didn't want to pop out the jug while I was on here, but
That's awesome.
I tried not to take a swig. But like, it's that perspective of looking at it not through comparison,
Right.
not from winning or losing, but like,
Yeah.
why do I want to do this? What feeling what feeling do I want to have? I want, I start thinking about what feeling I want to have.
Yeah, I
And
agree with you on that. Absolutely. I agree on the feeling thing because it's like that's the whole thing. Like again, when I reflect on my own life, it's just the type of way the way I'm wired where like each milestone wasn't enough for me, but why? I mean, if I was achieving certain, things in my career or whatever, why was it never enough? And I think that's what we have to look at. We have to look at all these steps we take are they're achievements no matter what. I mean, just getting through one exercise or training class is an achievement for some people. I mean, it is, and I mean, you going into that big show coming up, I mean, that is amazing at your age and at anybody's age. I mean, I've never done a show like that. I think it's amazing. And I think that what we need to learn too, and what you do so well is to lift each other up in those milestones or those
yeah,
little things that we do, because it's all about community. And I know, again, sometimes it sounds cliche, but it really is, because I find that, as we get older, we do gravitate towards people that are more like-minded. And I think the more positivity we can have around all these different struggles and these different journeys that we go through, then more and more people are going to be happier, and at the end of the day healthier. I think that happy and healthy goes hand in hand.
yeah, and that's the thing I noticed when I got up after the magazine. I hadn't even really planned on a show. I was
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
and then I did. And when I look at the pictures, it was more like, look at you, there you are, you're back. And I looked so happy
Yeah.
and healthy, and
Yes.
I was glowing. And I just think, you know also, if you don't put your hat in the arena,
Yeah.
you're for sure not going to win, right? But
Right.
like, but the winning is not necessarily always the accolade, like how you were
No.
saying, it's the journey.
Yeah.
It's and also when you're making a comeback, because like I really got knocked flat on my back.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and I was stubborn. You know how you didn't listen? I feel like almost worse, because every time I would have a surgery or get back up, then I'd go back at it again and
Yeah.
do, something as bad, if not worse. And so I finally listened to the universe and said,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
what do you want me to know? What do you want me to learn? And when I stopped running is when all the good things came to me, like my purpose, the studio, and all of the things. And I took a very long break.
Yeah.
And so now I'm looking at it through different eyes of, this is you getting up. Getting
Mhm.
up is not always pretty, right? It's
Right.
not always easy. And sometimes it's harder because, you know, that hamstring was really tight, that groin really hurt. And I was comparing myself to my old self. And once I stopped comparing myself to my old self,
Mhm.
I was able to move forward. And I feel like, today, for anybody out there that maybe had a journey like yours, where, you had a wake up call with your heart. I had a wake up call with like, why are you driving yourself into the ground, causing these kind of injuries? Maybe you
Yeah.
need to examine, what are you running from, or what are you doing here?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, exactly.
right.
I agree. And I'll tell you, funny, like interesting story, but the reason why I had my heart issue, and obviously friends and family knew and work knew, but I didn't really want to kind of, as you say, go public with it, because at the time, and it took me a long time to really share my story, which is ironic because now I help people share theirs, but it took me months to even kind of go public in a public way with it, because I thought I would be judged for it. Right. So when I had this, heart issue, I thought, wow, I've been the editor in chief of Oxygen Women's Fitness. And
Right.
right. So, and I
Yes.
also I knew all these fitness
Mhm.
experts and nutritionists and sports conditioning and and I'd interviewed them, and I knew I had like knowledge. My husband is from the sports supplement world. I mean, I was the first spokesmodel for Slim Quick supplements. Like, I mean, I knew stuff. So I was thinking, wow, if my heart's not healthy and physically, like, I'm almost embarrassed because I have all these resources and I should know better. And I think, so it took me months, it took me an editor at a women's magazine called Chatelaine to say, you know, you should share your story because it's going to help people. But I almost felt that shame, right? Because you think, well,
Yeah.
how did this happen when I thought I was all good? And so it took me that getting the word out in that first article in Chatelaine to realize the impact I had. And so then it changed me. That was my wake up call too, where I found that, you know, I'm a different person now. So I've gone through this to this point and now I'm here, but now what am I going to do with that knowledge, right? After this journey to this point, what's my next journey and where has it changed? And what's my purpose now, right now that this has actually happened? And at the end of the day, I don't know if you never really hear of people's going through really tough times and then, you know, it really staying horrible. Like there's always a lesson, right? And
Mhm.
then it's really up to you to take those life lessons and turn them into something positive and obviously inspirational. So I think
Mhm.
that's the journey, right? It's making sure you go through from struggle to strength, as I like to say, or from pain to purpose.
Right.
And you can, you know, share your story or even just deal with it yourself. But either way, you are a changed person. And everyone changes. We get older. You know, so many different things happen. And you have to just take what it is and just kind of move on and make the best of everything. And I think that's what you've done. That's what I've done. You know, I turned my next level after this book. I started my women's storytelling platform, redlilylife.com. And that's what I do is I help share women's stories so that they too can enjoy that journey. And hopefully I'll be a part of that in getting them to share it. So that's what I do. And I think it's just so important. But like I said, I'm no expert either. I'm still going through my own things. Every day there's something different. I have kids, you know, we're in a marriage, change jobs. I'm writing a new book right now. Like there's all these hurdles and different things that come up all the time and they'll never stop. But now I have more awareness about how to deal with those and how to, you know, push through them or to take what the message is from those experiences and to learn from it and to, you know, progress. So that's ultimately you know, my kind of advice for people is to take what you've gone through, see the good in it, or if there wasn't good in it, but just learn from it and turn that message into a positive and help others. So,
Yeah, and I like what you said. You weren't feeling like the person that did the supplement company, you know, and the person that knows all this. And
yeah,
I wasn't feeling like a fitness professional,
yes,
you know, and, you know, it was just all these things, but you're so much more than the titles you're placing on yourself.
exactly. Yes,
And you can find more aspects of yourself when the universe has got you to pay attention
yeah,
to, you know, I think really what's
agreed.
going on in your life. Now, what are 5 ways to for everyone out there, because I feel like we are in this era of women that keep feeling like they've got to do it all. So what are 5 ways to de-stress for them?
Oh my goodness. Well, it's really interesting. I will give you 5 ways, but a lot of people will say, well, what is self-care? Is it just going to get a manicure, you know? And it can be, but I like to look at self-care in a little bit different ways. I think self-care is not a one and done thing. Like self-care shouldn't just be go, you know, get a manicure, go home and back to the hustle and the grind and the craziness. I think it needs to be more mentally stimulating and have that energy, as you were saying. So, I mean, if it's going, like one thing could be going for a walk. You're taking in nature, you're able to obviously get some exercise, but it's something that will be longer lasting for you than a manicure. I always think those things are still quick fixes, if you will. And self care to me is longer term.
Right.
So I think again, it's like, you know, going for a really nice long walk or something. If it is, you know, maybe it is eating a really healthy meal, but then continuing that as a lifestyle. That's what self care is to me. When you're looking after yourself in a longer term way, maybe it is reading a good book, but not just reading the books. You don't just stop there. You have to take the messages from that book or the inspiration and then utilize them in your own life. I think those are the type of things that mean the most. And then, spending time with people who really appreciate you and are like-minded. I think that's something I've really learned over the years as well, that, just because somebody potentially has a title that you want to hang around with them, or they have a great reputation, or that, you want to be part of the crowd or anything. I think that at the end of the day, it's really about those meaningful relationships, the ones that are going to stick around with you through the hard times too. So that's another thing. Again, a long-term
Right.
thing versus a one-time thing. Just meet this person and then there's no substance, right? Those are the things that mean a lot more to me, as I've learned, because they will impact you more moving forward. Yeah, and I think that, overall, like, again, I know I keep saying sharing your story, but talking like this with you, we resonate. You totally get what I'm saying. I get what you're saying, and it will mean something to me moving out of this interview, because I will remember there's another woman out there feeling the same way as me about certain topics, and that I'm not alone. And I
Yeah.
think that's what's really important, is knowing you're not alone in all of these experiences, no matter who you are. Like, I've written for 150 different magazines, from health and wellness to luxury lifestyle and like glamour and hotels and everything, but it doesn't mean that I'm not a regular woman, a mom, a wife, a sister, a daughter, who really has those same life struggles that everybody goes through. And I think we have to remember that. So if we can't step back and look at that in our lives, then that's an issue. So I think we have to focus more on those kind of substance in our life as well. And that'll get us through, for sure.
And one of the things before we have to go, I hate to go, but you said in the book, and I this really stuck out to me, that like it's through our actions and the accolades and the things that we're going for, that we're constantly looking for being accepted, recognition, and love, and that we dedicate too much time to being accepted, approved, praised for what we can do.
Right, right. And we do dedicate too much time. And I am guilty of that still. Like, I think, like I
It's
said, I'm
hard to quit, isn't it?
hard. And you can't like just snap out of it and then all of a sudden not want those accolades. I mean, it's what we're like reared to do, is get that education, get the job, get the guy, get the, you know what I mean? Like, get the physique, get the whatever. And I think it's like, it's fine. But the thing is, and you have to really kind of still understand that that's not the end to, your goal.
Right.
It's not. You
Yes.
have to appreciate those things, appreciate, and I like to say this too as a quote, but appreciate where you've come from. But more importantly, take that and where are you going to go with it? Like, where are you going to take that experience or that life lesson and learn and move forward to become a better person? And I think, and that's exactly what it is. It's like, these accolades and that are wonderful. And if you look at my social media, you'll still see everything that I'm doing, because I'm trying to get my name out there and my brand, and create that community. But at the same time, you have to be happy with yourself and what you've achieved, versus looking for that outside of validation. And again, those things are great. Titles are wonderful. Going into the big show you're going into is amazing. And it's wonderful. But at the end of the day, whether someone places or not, you have to be happy with your journey to that stage, and, you could say the stage in the fitness world or the stage in life. I think you just have to be appreciative of where you've gotten yourself.
And I love that. And the two words that I have been choosing on this journey right now, and in fact, I think it's one of the episodes I had recently on Friday, but it's just choose yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Exactly. That's
yeah,
what I'm saying. It's choose yourself, and, don't worry about what everybody else thinks. Go for it. And you certainly have in Bodyscape, and like, putting yourself out there and feeling good about yourself, having a comeback and getting in that bathing suit and like and those glamorous like outfits, and, feeling good, but not for the validation of others looking at
right.
you, although they are appreciating what you have put forth and
Yeah.
you're inspiring them, but really knowing that you did it And you're going to look back on that in 10 years and say, I can't believe I did that, but I did. And it was part of your journey. And look at you now, you're shining. And, it's really something to be proud of for sure. So I'd love to do it. I'd love to be on the cover. Let's see what happens.
Oh, there you go. I love that too.
Yeah, it's a goal of mine to put myself out there like that too. So we'll see what happens. But, right now I have so many other things I'm working on, but I just hope that some of them at least will touch somebody. And that's what, my ultimate goal is. So.
Yeah, I'm just like, I think I might have a project for you. So
Yeah.
keep it in mind, because I'll
Yeah.
probably, I'll message you after this.
Absolutely.
But I
Exactly.
have like so enjoyed your story, loved
Yeah.
your book. Say the title for everyone again.
Yeah, it's called My Heart, Myself. I don't know if you can see it right there. And it's knowing when to slow down is half the battle. I mean, that is the truth, isn't it? It's knowing when to slow down. And I took that wake up call as it shook my life, but it steered me in the right direction. And I
Yeah.
think hopefully some of the tips in here, they're practical tips, will help people realize even before they get to something detrimental like mine. But yeah, My Heart,
We
Myself.
get warning signs, don't we?
We do. And now you make sure you take them and, think
Yeah.
about them. But this is available on Amazon and under Kerrie Lee Brown. And obviously anybody can reach me on social media or find me at my websites, kerrieleebrown.com or at Kerrie Lee Brown, whatever. And, I have a lot more to share in the new year. I'm excited. So I hope, your audience will look forward to that too.
This is so exciting. And I have
Yeah.
so enjoyed you today. And you guys, I love the book. I literally read it while I was on the treadmill and took notes.
Oh my goodness. And that's awesome because you were multitasking, but you were getting some great stuff. I'm so glad you read it. Thank you.
Inside and out. Thanks everybody for listening to this episode. And I thank you, Kerrie, for sharing your story. It was so
Yeah.
inspiring.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I really do.
And as always, you guys, let us know what resonated with you and tag us on social media and keep on keeping on. Bye, everyone.